Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I've got my fresh cup of coffee here, and I saw Skip had one too, so we're all good for a podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, required equipment, mic, lights, good audio, a cup of coffee.
We always talk about the mic check. You never think about, hey, is the coffee check done?
The coffee check, yes. That's a critical
Uh,
element.
so Today we're talking about something like we've been kind of having a little bit of discussions around how to get good outside advice. Like, when you're running a small business, running a company, like you have these great ideas, but you're too close to the problem. So getting a mentor, getting a peer group is always great.
Hmm.
But how do you qualify and how do you gain that level of advice? Like, what is good advice? What is bad advice? And there's this term you hear me use a lot, like on videos and on uh, on live streams, where I talk about the charlatan. And that's the person who maybe they ran one company
Yeah.
and now they think they have all the answers.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you were successful once, so you must be successful all the time. Like, okay, in scientific
Hmm.
theory, your sample set's a little low.
Yep.
So, it worked in that one situation at one time. So is it solid advice? And so how do you find solid outside leadership advice? And it's kind of odd because I talk to people and, like, if I, Adam Walter, am my ego is pretty big. If I am trying to judge people's ability to give leadership advice, what do I base it upon? Am I basing it on my own history? How do I know I'm right? How do
Uh-huh.
I know that my view isn't skewed because of my background? And I start with the assumption of, yes, my view is skewed. I am a product of my own experience, and I accept that. And what I've noticed is you get good leaders, and they tend not to speak in absolutes.
Hmm. Yep.
Is one golden rule I've got. So when you're looking for an outside mentor or an outside leadership advice, I want to give in this podcast, some of Skip and I's experiences here, and we're getting advice and talking advice. Like, how did we get to the point where we knew what we were doing? When I was young, I spoke in absolutes. A Sith speaks in
Oh,
absolutes. I'm
yes.
emotional. I know what the
Yep.
right thing is. If people would just do this, it would fix everything.
Yep.
And then as you get older, as I started skipping from job to job to job, doing consulting contract, 3-year stint here, 4-year stint there, 7-year stint there, I started seeing different ways to solve similar problems, and they all worked.
Yep.
And I started getting this idea of, like, okay, Adam, when you were younger, there was one way to do things. Now you see 10 ways to do things.
Uh-huh.
Now you're reaching into your toolbox and thinking, okay, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Let me listen to the person across the table from me and ask them, what are you trying to do? And
Hmm.
why are you trying to do it? And let me look into my bag of tricks and see if I know anything.
Yep. Yeah,
And
and
that's
that
a sign of a
listening
good outside
element.
leader. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that listening element is really important because there are a lot of ways to do things, and a lot of it really depends on what are you really trying to do. And so if someone's giving advice, hey, do this, that may be great, but is that really what you want to be doing? Is that how you want to grow your business? Is that going to get you to the goals that you want? So it's not, many times it's not just about the bank account and what shows up there. I mean, there is a quality of life. There is, a culture and a style that you want to work in. So those all factor in. But as far as, critiquing advice or leadership input, I think one of the things that I've hit on is you you kind of look at the big picture, but sometimes you also drill down into smaller elements. And while you may be able to look at someone and go, they didn't really do that very well, or this part, I don't really agree with their opinion or their approach on that. But there are elements where you go, we are aligned in this area of maybe it's something operational or strategic, whatever it is, we're aligning our goals, the methodologies. It's not necessarily, Adam, you're calling earlier, what is it? The, the bias, what you were saying? Um,
Confirmation bias.
confirmation bias. It's not, you have to be careful of that, but sometimes you can get some advice in one area because they're in the right space. They've got the right perspective on what you're working on. And so I think that's valuable because trying to find someone who is, if you're looking for some advice about your business, trying to find someone who is the expert in all areas, in all ways that match exactly what you're trying to do is pretty unrealistic. So
Yep.
you are going to have to go out and, not necessarily cherry pick, but get some elements together. I guess you kind of look at it like a college education. You might have a professor that's really great in math, and you really like that, and you learn a lot from them, but you probably wouldn't want to take English from them, right? The literature would just be awful going through those with that professor. So you kind of need to zero it in on your goals and expectations there.
Yeah. The cool thing is, like, if you are good at math, though, is that you can apply some of those same principles to English. Now, you're going to have to take that with a grain of salt, but
Yeah.
it's like my wife. Like, she has her PharmD. She has a master's in genetics. She's a good student. She has some very, very good principles. She may not be the best math person, but she's got such good technique that she will learn faster than most other people in the same situation. She knows how to ask for advice. She knows to say, I need a tutor in this area because it's not where I need to be. And so there are concepts you can work on. Now, if you ask for direct math advice or English advice from somebody who's a non-expert, you're gonna struggle. They're gonna say, you know what we need to do? We need to find somebody. We need to find somebody to help you out here.
Yep.
The charlatan will pretend.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I know exactly
Yeah.
what's going on, and they believe in themselves as well. Like, they are fully confident in themselves because they don't know anything else.
Mm-hmm.
They are fake it till you make it, and they've gotten to the point where, like, I'm just as good, and they haven't been up against somebody who is in a true spot where they have decades of experience. And this is why sometimes you can get these leaders who have 2 decades of experience in accounting as a CFO leading a team of 60, and they will have some of the best advice for you in IT on how to manage your teams, not because they've managed an IT department of engineers, but because they understand people.
Yeah.
But again, you have to take it with a grain of salt because they're just in the accounting field. Now, what if you had somebody who had led a team of accountants, and then in another life, they led a team of HR, an HR department. And in a life before that, they led a team of, like, just standard technicians for Allo or for an ISP.
Mm-hmm.
And that person who's led multiple teams in varying capacities is going to have distilled out different ways to lead.
Yes.
That others would not have, because they're like, okay, there is more than one way to lead a team. Teams have different dynamics. Whereas the person who just spent 20 years leading the accounting teams, they're going to see the dynamics of their accounting teams. They're going to have a lot of wisdom there, and it should be valued, but it's not going to be as robust as the person who led different kinds of teams.
Yep.
The person who has led multiple companies in multiple styles. These polymaths, so to speak, that are out there in business are the ones you should be listening to, because they have tried and true methodologies for making things work, for being successful. And you should be able to tell a good leader by who's standing behind them. Like, I've been fired from jobs where people still call me for advice. Like,
Yeah.
that is a good sign. But why did I get fired? Various reasons. Sometimes it's a riff. Sometimes it's Adam was an asshole. You know, but when it comes down to leadership style, do people still from their previous teams lean on them? Do they still call out, say, hey, I need some advice here?
Hmm.
Or are they just enamored, like, oh my gosh, this person's worth millions of dollars, or this person was a leader, I should respect them because they're a leader?
Yep.
Or are they somebody like, hey, let's go out and get a pint sometime, I'd really like to talk through some things that are going on, or I'd like to pick your brain on something. And that's how you get that outside leader. Look and see who's behind them. Are they a bunch of yes men, yes women, or are they people who have genuine relationships that respect this person's advice and where to go in their field?
Hmm.
And find those people. And the beauty is, like, you are running your MSP and you need these outside opinions because you have confirmation bias. We've talked about this in a previous podcast episode. Look it up, confirmation bias.
Yep.
And you have this little world you're working in, and you assume this is how the universe works because it works for you. However, you're stuck, or you have some bad ideas that you are working off of. And you need somebody from the outside to come in and say, oh, okay, I see what you're doing there. You're doing great, but you need to do this differently now. And I've heard Skip just this morning say that. Like,
Yep.
they're stuck as an MSP. They just need to shift gears.
Yep.
And, we can't tell you how to shift gears. We can't tell you what you need to do in your specific MSP. But having that outside person come in and say, you're ready to shift gears.
Yep.
Now, what does that look like for you? You as a leader need to decide.
Yeah.
You would
And
decide,
that,
are you going to niche up? Are you going to
yeah.
invest and hire more employees? Are you going to do a huge marketing campaign? What is it that you're going to do?
Right. And the harder decisions you have to make are the ones that often either pay really well or hurt you really bad. So, if it were easy, everybody would do it, kind of thing. You just do this one thing, and yes, everyone on your team's going to like doing that. Your customers are going to like doing that. Everything's going to be great. Well, there are some of those little tips out there, but those aren't going to make drastic changes in your organization. And we do see this a lot. MSPs join us, they grow. We get MSPs that are at different stages through acquisitions. So, this is nothing new, but I have, been seeing this with a lot of MSPs, and I kind of put them into buckets. They're in this phase here, they're in this phase. And, moving through those, you do need to be careful about the advice that you listen to. Because, as Adam said, there are multiple ways to do this. And you may find someone who is giving good advice. They're qualified, everything we've been talking about to this point. But the advice that they're giving is going to steer your organization in a direction that matches their expectations or kind of where they were going. And you need to be comfortable with that. So I guess I'm speaking with a little bit of experience here in this one. And what it came down to was a significant culture change in the organization.
Yep.
And, sometimes those are really hard. And if you're prepared for that, if you understand the challenges, knowing that, hey, I'm going to take this advice, it's going to change the culture of my organization, but the result is where I want to go, then absolutely, yes, do that. But you need to know that. So when you go into those, well, it might change our culture. I don't know. You need to look into those sort of things and really understand. And is that a direction you're willing to go? I've worked with several business owners, and they've balanced that decision. Some saying, yes, this is where we want to go. Others are saying, no, I like this culture. I know, our business could grow more. I could make more money, but I would hate showing up for work every day, because the culture changes. And right now I love showing up for work. So why would I, sacrifice that for just more money? So it really comes down to your goals. What do you want to do? Make sure you get the right advice for what you really want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the great part is to, when you seek that outside advice, what should you do next? Does this person have mentors? Where are they getting their advice from? Some people think they're at the top of the pile. You're never at the top of the pile. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Not even Steve Jobs was at the top of the pile. There were still people who knew more than he did.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great visionary. I respect Steve Jobs. I would never want to work for him.
Yeah. No,
uh,
not at
you
all.
know, and that's okay. That's
Right.
okay. This is the way the world works. And there are some people who I love spending I just need 20 minutes with this person to give me some
Mm-hmm.
advice and help set me on the straight and narrow, because they just have a way of putting things into perspective for me. And I need that from the outside. As wise as Skip is, and as much as he sees all these MSPs, we're still in our little ecosystem here, and we
Yeah.
blind each other because we're seeing all of how the hot dog is made. We need
Mm-hmm.
to step outside and ask advice. Like, what do you think about this, honestly? Am I on the right track? Or am I just too much in my head and inventing things? And when you get that person who comes from the outside, take their biases into consideration. Who is their mentor? Who are they learning from? And what is their methodology? And that way, when you get that outside leadership advice, you can say, oh, well, this person comes from a large MSP, or they come from a software company, or they come from a large vendor, or they come from a small vendor, or they came from a quick exit, or they're a serial entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Think of these things and how they are going to color their advice, or what advice to ask them. Just like Skip said earlier, the math versus English advice. Knowing that you have an English professor in front of you, they're still a professor.
Yeah.
They still have got great advice. They are still proven to think things through really well. They have been tested by the academic system. I'm not going to ask them how to do a Fourier transfer system. You know what? They could probably figure it out if they were given enough time. They would do some research. They would find some experts. But if I ask them, hey, what are some good study habits so I can learn how to do Fourier transfer forms?
Mm-hmm.
They'd be like, well, here's what I would do if I were you. And there you're in their wheelhouse. There you're getting solid advice. If you're looking to sell your MSP, find somebody who sold multiple, or find
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's brokered multiple sales. They were ones who facilitated the sale, and ask their advice. What do I need to prep for? Like, well, what kind of exit are you looking at? What do your numbers look like? Let's get some things on paper and let's figure this out. Or here's some good resources for you to value your company. And here's where you need to be before you get there. And so
Yeah.
you can start prepping 10 years ahead of time. But if you're looking for somebody to buy your company, like, what does that look like? If you're looking for some way to grow your MSP, look for people who've been through those similar growth tracks. Look for lookalike MSPs. Like, maybe that one person who had one success story isn't great and they're kind of brash. Well, why? Why did that work for them?
Yeah.
Why did that brash personality accelerate their MSP? Were they just in the right market at the right time? Could be. That's the sad part about a business. You could do everything right and still not outpace the idiot down the street because they had a better opportunity.
Yep.
That's
Sometimes
just
those
life,
things
people.
happen.
That's the Betamax versus VHS all over again. But
Yeah.
the thing is, when you're looking for that outside leadership advice, find those wizened characters, and they might be in their 30s. They might be in their 20s. They might be in their
Mm-hmm.
70s. They might predate technology era. But what is it that you're looking for advice on? Where are you stuck? Are you having trouble with personnel? Are you having trouble with people? Then you might want to talk to somebody who has managed a lot of engineers. How did they get them through hard times? Maybe you're looking for advice on how to structure and grow your MSP to 50 employees. Maybe you're just trying to get from 10 to 20 employees. That's another big one. Find people who have recently done it and ask them what they think. Because growing your company 20 years ago is different than growing your company today. Some of the basic principles still apply, but now we have different talent pools. So you're going to want more detailed advice. And so, there's a lot of people who are out there and giving leadership advice who have no business giving leadership advice.
Mm-hmm.
They are not a great leader. They were a great CEO of one company
Mm-hmm.
because they understood what was going on. They were kind of a jerk. And so I always tell people, in your teams, you can't tell somebody to be a leader. They either are or aren't.
Right.
Somebody can grow to become a leader, but a leadership is not a title. Leadership is not a title. It is almost a personality trait. And I've read a couple books on this,
Yep.
that when
I
we
would
look
agree
at
with that.
great leaders throughout history, they didn't have a set of qualities that made them a great leader. I mean, whether it was opportunity or it was happened to be in the right place, right time, they were born into the right family for royalty. They happened to be a
Mhm.
general at the right moment in history. All of them had different personalities, but they were leaders. They were just, this is who they were.
Yep.
And so I think the book was called Snapshots of Leadership. If you ever want a book recommendation. And the concept here is to look inside your MSP, see who the leaders are. Who do people naturally follow? Whether or not they're a manager, there's a person when you say, hey, let's
Mhm.
go do this thing, and everybody glances over in one person's direction.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
person you want, right? And I've seen in the multiple companies I've worked for, a lot of times it's this admin assistant who was hire number 2, and they know everything about the company. They know
Yep.
how everything's made. They know the history. They know everything. And so even the CEO glances over at them and goes, Susan, what do you think? Like, do you think this is where we should be going, or what? Like, do you think Bob would accept that?
Yep.
And she'd be like, well, I mean, back in 2012 we did this, and they give you the history. That's a leader, even though they don't
Mhm.
have the role. So outside of your company, this person may never have held a leadership role, but they might have a natural proclivity towards leadership advice. They've worked in so many organizations and seen so much stuff that they are a leader.
Yeah.
And so,
I think we're better at that than we used to be, but that's always a caution or an element that I throw out there when talking to people is we evaluate the type of engagements we want to have with people based on the role that they're fulfilling. And the number one thing I tell everybody is quit looking at job titles. All right, that those do not matter. We're looking to engage in a role, and that when you're looking internal for your team, but also working with your customers, you know that is a really fundamental element that you need to get a perspective on, because you're going to talk to different people that are doing a variety of roles, and there's not necessarily one more important than the other. They all need to be out there to get the job done. And sometimes we have to ourselves jump into several different roles, but there's going to be one that you do really, really well. You need to embrace that. But also, as Adam's saying, when you're looking for these other elements, that leadership role may show up in, what would seem like low-level employees, all right? But they do have that ability in that role, and sometimes you can really capitalize on that and do it really, really well.
so to sum up this podcast here, it's like, look for leadership positions outside of your company that can give you advice in areas that you need help in. Be open and vulnerable with them so that they can help give you honest advice. Look for people who have had a variety of experiences and don't speak in absolutes, who are
Mhm.
adaptable in their mindset, because they need to be able to empathize with you and wrap their head around what your business is trying to do and say, well, of these 16 other companies I worked with, I've seen this consistently. Like,
Mhm.
I've never led an MSP, but I've been watching all of you
Mhm.
and looking at you, and
Mhm.
I have gotten a vast amount of knowledge. My leadership experience comes from the corporate environment. If you slapped me into a MSP of 500 employees, I'd be right at home sitting in a director position or a
Yeah.
CEO position. It would be very natural for me, and I would have lots of great processes I would put in place. That's where I naturally fit. But when it comes to MSPs, I've never led an MSP.
Right.
So should I be giving MSP advice? In some situations, yes, I'm the math teacher. In some teaching situations, I'm the
Yeah.
English teacher.
Yeah.
But either way, having held roles, there is a spot for that. There are some people who are really great entrepreneur leaders. There's some people that are great personnel leaders. There's some people that are really great innovators. Steve Jobs was a terrible personnel manager. If you read his biography, terrible at dealing with people. But he made people believe in what he was doing. He was inspirational. And so there was, how did he inspire? And you can take advice from that and see where it came from. So look for these different kinds of leaders outside of your organization that you can listen to and that you can surround yourself with, so that you don't get stuck in this little like microcosm where you're making these errors over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So you keep growing. Don't just subscribe to somebody because they say they're a leadership coach. Find people that match what you're looking for. Find the ones that have the experience that you need, regardless of their title, and place them in that group and continuously ask their advice.
There you go. Sounds good.
Thanks, Skip, for coming on. I know we both have leadership experience on this team, just different areas.
Yeah.
Find ones that can strengthen you and surround yourself with this little board that can give you advice over time. Thanks for coming on, Skip. This has been great. Just kind of getting back into the routine with us on the podcast. I hope people got lots of insights out of this. We really need people to like and review us on Apple. Leave a review on Spotify. Click a star for us. Really helps us out big time. Small MSP vendors out there. This is how you support us and help us get the message out that people need to be more conversational, and they need to be working with each other to create a better community.
Yep.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.